So the live streaming is getting there. It just take a few seconds. So the live streaming is getting there. It's just it's started the live stream. So let us now continue. So good morning, everybody. I'm Rachel Yeager. I am the head of W3C chapter in New York Metropolitan and executive director in WebInnovationX think tank for digital transformation. So today, this is a live recorded event webinar, and this is the theme of this is actually the third day of the Web Innovation X Week for 2020. And we are back to the future, thinking strategically about web innovation and what we can change right now. Today's session is about this startup forum. The startup forum is where the W3C New York Metro chapter engages startups in developing business models, human capital, new applications, technology, and service platforms. And in today's startup forum, we are honored. And this is our first ever startup forum. So we're excited that we have very two exciting person and also companies, startup companies joining us. So we have Wayne Chan, CEO at Spruce Systems, and Shami Akmi Mana, CEO at Convergence Tech. And so both are very exciting person with a very interesting product idea. And so I can't wait to speak with them. The format of this forum is a presentation and conversation style. So the speakers are going to be able to present anytime if they wish during this 1 hour. And it's a conversation and between us. This is actually among the first time I spoke with the speakers. So I also are learning about them as as the audience learn about these two fantastic person in front of you. With all this announcement I just made, today is really an unique opportunity to listen to the journey of starting up. And this journey of starting up is, of course, is very unique to every tech founders. But today, the two speakers brought to them some very unique understanding. I believe that we will be talking about digital identity, and also we'll be talking about really just from the name of the two companies, you can see the different approaches in terms of digital identity. Both are really very exciting perspectives about how to bring about innovation and startups. So, so let me start by the session by allowing my special guests and speakers to introduce themselves. So starting with Wayne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Wayne. I have a background in engineering and startups. Before this, I was working at Consensus on the digital identity team there. Before that, I started a different company and have consulted for a bunch. So excited to go more in depth about my profile. I have a slide on that, so I'll just leave it to there. Great to meet everyone.
Thank you. Shami, yeah?
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Rachel. And Karen, I see you online. Thank you so much for the introduction as well. So background on myself, I'm an engineer by training. Decided to hang that hat up and worked in law enforcement for a little while in the UK and have been in business for the last, I guess, 16 years or so. The last ventures that I've had included coffee to clothing to recruiting and analytics. And since my last exit about 9 years ago, I took a break. Was trying to figure out if I do another startup or just chill, and came across blockchain and Ethereum at the time. Decided to start a small venture and things have grown since then. And Convergence and Tribe have been around for about 3 years now.
So shall we continue on this, because all of you are very humble, left out all the exciting things that you all are doing, come to this stage, right? And I was looking at some of your background, and I saw very interesting that you were in the London Metropolitan Police, right? And you proudly put it in your in your profile in LinkedIn, right? And and such a interesting journey come to this stage. And I also want to bring out the fact that you started your Convergence in 2018, right?
Yep.
And yeah, and in Toronto, Canada, right?
That's right.
And could you want to share a bit about what you think about some of the technical concept as we start this forum, about the ideas behind your product and services and the genesis of this new venture, new startup?
Sure, for sure. So at the time, we've kind of reinvented ourselves a couple of times, and the current model that you see is the model that we will that we foresee for the near future as well. So we started off at a time when there was absolute overhype in the market and total skepticism of the market. So what we were trying to do was find a middle ground, and our model was quite unique. So at the time, we'd go into an organization and rapid prototype an application within a week. So 2 weeks maximum, you're able to see a prototype, as opposed to going down a pilot path, which could take 3, 6, 9 months in many instances. So the organizations really loved it because it was non-invasive. We were actually upskilling the teams as well. When we were doing this, we were actually asked to come and help with some of the other piloting projects as well. So the initial focus was very much meant to be an education-focused company, but because of our early success and interest from the market, we looked at the 2 key areas that we wanted to focus on that we thought were fairly broken. One being identity, the other being traceability. And I think with COVID accelerated problems that are being surfaced. We see huge problems with supply chain. We see huge problems with, lack of identity and lack of verification process when we move to an online world. So those are 2 key areas that we wanted to focus on. We've rebranded ourselves as Convergence simply because we feel that technology is simply one component. There are many other things that need to come together. People and culture are fundamentally important for transformation as well. And then, things like governance and so on and so forth. So Convergence tends to focus on the traceability side of things, the digital transformation piece, whereas Tribe Identity focuses on identity. So with identity, our very first application that we launched was around digital credentials. That was tailored towards the education sector. And then, of course, early this year, we had Kim Cameron join us as a partner as well. Kim retired from Microsoft as a chief identity architect, and it's been an absolute honor to have him. So through his guidance as well, we've kind of expanded further. There have been a couple of other products that we've launched in market as well, and they've all been quite successful so far.
This is wonderful. I want to go to Wayne and then come back to both of you about all these concepts that we just that Shami just talked about. So Wayne, coming back to you, you didn't mention that you left a very well-established company. You have been heading the product of Consensus for a couple of years, and you started very recent during the pandemic, right? The company. You can unmute yourself. Yeah, please unmute yourself. Yeah. And please, do you want to share a bit about the concept of your products and also drill down a bit on the technical terms, that that are key to your delivery?
Sure. I prepared a couple of slides for this. Is it okay if I share?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to share any slides anytime. Yeah.
Cool. So we'll just breeze through this pretty quickly about who I am and how we got here. So yes, it's true. We started pretty recently. I believe we all went full time on this, my 3 co-founders and I, this past August. And I used to work at Consensus. I've been pretty active in the standards ecosystem, including as the co-chair of the W3C Credentials Community Group, which maintains the verifiable credential specification via the maintenance group, but the requests go through there. I'm active in the Decentralized Identity Foundation. I volunteer with the City of New York, and previously, I've had another startup. So about 3 years ago, that's when I met my co-founders at Consensus. We were actually working on digital asset structuring and figuring out how to talk to regulators and do everything the right way. And then we moved to decentralized identity. As Shami said, that's the key problem in a lot of these decentralized marketplaces. How can you do business with someone if you don't know who they are? So in April 2020, we took a cool off period, kind of chilled out a bit, and had more time to do standards work. So that's kind of what we did. In August, we finished before then a bit, we finished the Columbia University and IBM Accelerator, found our first customers, and over 3 months, we've grown to a team of 8, mostly engineers. We focus on credentials, and it's important to agree on what those are. We like to take a broad definition that they're shared beliefs about the world. And today, a lot of these different actions follow completely different paper-heavy processes, especially across like different verticals and different geographies. And they're really expensive to coordinate into a workflow. This is a hugely horizontal problem, so that's why it's so hard to build a business here. And that's why whenever we see other like startups working in the space, we're really excited to meet them because frankly, like when you're building your company and using some standards components, either everyone accepts the standards and everyone does very well because the pie grows, or everyone just is extinguished, right? So no one wants to be extinguished, so we should all work together and figure out how to like move towards this model of interoperation. How have standards changed? For credentials, they used to be wax seals, they used to be signatures. We digitized them, but not all digital formats are the same. Some of them are machine readable. You can have code that understands, that first name is this value, right? But with recent developments at the W3C, I believe last November, it became a recommendation to use verifiable credentials, which are tamper-proof, meaning that there's a cryptographic signature, and if you change anything in there, it breaks, as opposed to like a PDF. And they're also connected, meaning that you can refer to what schemas are deriving the information. You can tell a computer, hey, this string isn't just a string, it's also a bank account number, and this is how you handle it. So there's been emerging interest. This is kind of the curve of it. A bunch of organizations, I'd say starting with Hyperledger and Linux Foundation, they were pretty interested in solving this problem, although Sovereign didn't contribute a lot of their tooling to Hyperledger ND and Ursa and some other pieces until fairly recently. Decentralized Identity Foundation was started in 2017 to really focus on this stuff and the industry implications. And since then, there's been a huge amount of interests. Two notable ones that will just give you an idea about this digitization of credentials is British Columbia is one that gets pointed to a lot because it is an actual government, the province of British Columbia in Canada. They are using verifiable credentials to issue business registrations to companies. So a company can then take their credential, present it to like a bank or someone to prove that they have a valid registration, right? Instead of going through a workflow and paperwork heavy process. Workday is trying to, with Workday credentials, allow the credentials to travel with the employee. So there's no phoning home to all your previous employers when you're trying to apply to a new job. You just kind of zap all the information over in one fell swoop, and it's verified. The information follows you as opposed to the companies, and this is what is known, what some people call user-centric modes of using data. So the problem that everyone in the credential ecosystem is trying to solve is a bunch of pain points across different, the issuer, the holder, and the verifier. Those are like the 3 parties that everyone who's doing credentialing will commonly refer to in this workflow. And there's friction across all of them. Foremost, if they're focused on paper, and feel free to cut me off. I'm going too long. I have a few more minutes, but
I was just about to say that please feel free to elaborate. This is a virtual webinar. Yeah. So and I do know that I do know that you may have some appointments immediately after, but if time is flexible on your end, we can go as long as we want. There's no constraint.
So paper-heavy processes, reissuance of lost documents. The whole point of getting credentials is that the holder can present something to the verifier, and then like the verifier lets them do something else because they're authorized or authenticated. And what happens is when you have some miscommunication, the verifier has to go to the issuer, which defeats the whole point of that credential, right? Like in many cases today, like diplomas for colleges are so easy to forge that the employer just always calls the university. And hey, is this student in your roster? Did they actually go here? Did they graduate this year? As opposed to just presenting a diploma that said that you went somewhere, because diploma mills do quite a good job at it. So if we can figure out how to solve some of these big problems, we can move to much better flows. It might not sound like a big issue to call issuers, but when someone is showing up with 100 credentials and you have to verify all of them, you have a problem of scale here. So we think that interaction should be direct as possible. And to achieve this, everyone has to use the same information schemas. People, businesses don't lose their documents, and standardizing digital workflows should be easy for any vendor to implement. And effectively, the big picture of if we move to this new paradigm, what we get is a core prescription of how this trusted business network works, or whatever you want to call it, where you have an issuer, holder, and verifier flow. You have defined information schemas that can tailor into different verticals and solve problems there, but also this root of trust that you're able to understand, okay, who's a valid issuer here from our institutions and our regulators. Maybe we add all the universities to a registry and their issuers. There are already such registries today and associations. It's just a matter of taking those existing structures and figuring out a reliable way to digitize them so that they can operate in a digital world where transactions are moving online. So what we're building as Spruce towards this is a complete product suite to enable the data supply chain. That's what we're calling it. That's the set of data assets, actors, and interconnecting activities such as verifications, processing algorithms, or even manual approvals that result in a final data product that can be sold directly, used internally, or shared. For example, a mortgage broker will take a bunch of mortgage application documents, including tax forms, including credit histories, including any liens you have. Those are the raw materials in the data supply chain. And they go through value-adding processes where you have internal approvals, you do additional verifications, and finally you get to the decision if someone gets a mortgage or not. This is happening over and over again informally across so many different verticals and industries, and there are pieces of it that we can crystallize into products that can solve a lot of problems out of the box. Specifically, what we're building is Intake, which is a form builder with a user portal that knows how to handle documents. Many companies in the credential space like to operate thinking that the world is flush with these credentials, but no, it's an emerging standard that came out last year. So we can't just assume that the world is flush with them. We have to figure out how to create them, and creating them with PDFs is probably one of the best ways I've discovered. So we're building a form builder that knows how to handle those documents, provides value off the bat, and also allows you to leverage into a credentialing workflow. Credible is our free and open credential wallet. We think that credential wallets have to be open source and free. We think that any business models that basically monetize credential wallets either have to make an extremely niche product that serves a really great demographic who is willing to pay for it, or they have to sort of anchor towards an advertising and data play, selling the data of their users. We're clearly not interested in the latter. So we're not interested in building just for a specific niche. So that's why we want a general purpose Amazon basics, so to speak. I think it's trademarked, so that's not what we invented. I'm just referring to it. And DidKit is our cross-platform toolkit for using W3C verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers. We're passing the test suites from the W3C here. It's built in Rust, but the idea here is allowing any application, even a WordPress installation, to know how to handle credentials. And then finally, we have some enterprise tooling, such as KeyLink, that links existing system accounts to cryptographic keys. If you have an Active Directory account, we need to figure out how to allow that to issue credentials. If you log in with Okta or Google, fine, let's figure out how to glue that to a key pair in a reliable way so that we can start working with credentials. So for Intake, Intake is a form builder that knows how to handle documents from collection to processing to storage to sharing. We see that even without credentials, we can deliver value to our customers using Intake, but it enables this universe of credentialing workflows. Funding, this was a requested section in the speaker request. So we're bootstrapped with customer revenue. We have sold to some enterprises, and our biggest focus right now is to de-risk the company by finding product market fit. That's why we're building a lot of Intake.
So Wayne, just hold that. If you don't mind, I'll ask you to share the screen again later, because I'm going to ask about that question. So if you can stop for this minute and then
Yeah.
stop your screen share. So I don't want to spoil the surprises for our audience, right? So I thought it's so fantastic. Two of you you came up with ideas. Um, one is converging and also looking into the ID perspective, but more looking at like a single point, like I think the basic, like what I'm understanding, Shami, please, you can unmute yourself and we can interact on that. But it's basically more of a single place, right? You know what I mean, where you can access all this complexity, and then Wayne, on the other hand, is like thinking about like more like simplifying everything, right? Make it but yet the how to say it serves really like the different dynamics of things, right? Yeah. I mean, how do y'all want to talk about this? Because I just thought that it was wonderful that the first ever startup forum, we have two of you to speak together, and and y'all are both in the similar space, right? So y'all want to comment about it, like your product philosophy and things like that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Great presentation, Wayne. And certainly, we're certainly in line with what Wayne presented as well. I mean, what we've currently seen as far as identity is there's a misalignment in what governments think identity is, what organizations think identity are, as well as what a student sees as identity. I mean, I have an Australian citizenship. I've recently become Canadian citizen. I have an Estonian e-residency. You know, when I need to verify these big identities, if I'm at an airport, that gets verified instantaneously. But depending on who needs to verify these, it still needs to phone home, right? So you still need to phone home with I mean, in Canada, I have a driver's license and a health card, but my driver's license is the only accepted identity, whereas my health card, even though it has a photo, is not accepted as an identity. So these are things like, in current world, if we were to overhaul such systems, you're talking billions of dollars and massive infrastructure layovers just to overhaul a simple solution. And what we are talking, in fact, with what Wayne's talking as well, is around this whole notion of your verifiable credential being your proof of claim. So I just need to prove that my claim is I'm over 21. I need to prove that my claim is I have this degree. I need to prove that I have this COVID rapid test or COVID vaccine eventually. And these are claims that you would have on a wallet or form. And, we have a wallet as well, and I completely agree with Wayne. These are things that need to be open source, free to use, as opposed to a monetized, let's try and figure out what data we could manipulate in someone's wallet. So we see this as a very inexpensive way to implement an identity solution, if you like. But the main focus is proving your claim. That is the whole focus of that. So the who-ness, the what-ness is what you're trying to prove, and which is why we've embarked on this journey. I mean, our focus has been very much around education credentials in the first phase of our product launch. Currently, our focus is very much healthcare. So we have an active pilot on a COVID-like test where we're mimicking what a COVID vaccine could look like. And these credentials are issued to you as a healthcare worker, a staff member, but then that is then used to verify you as an individual before you enter a building. So we see the world of verifiable credentials playing a significant role, which is why we've been very active with W3C and really pleased that W3C have taken such a stance on verifiable credentials, because it certainly helps us when we speak to big enterprise clients or government, that there's something that we could reference, as opposed to your typical identity solutions are very centralized, if you like. I mean, that was one of the main reasons that we got into identity, was we saw that thousands of actual identity firms, who's doing what, that was honest, that was actually putting the citizen, the patient, the student at the front foremost of this conversation, where you empower them with their data, as opposed to someone else owning that data. So the opposite of that we worked at reluctantly was in India, for example, where we had to integrate ADA as part of one of our land registry solutions. And highly privacy invasive. There's significant concerns that we have of those technology. Sorry, I waffled on there for a bit, but that's our take on this.
I felt that, and Wayne, I will come to you in a bit on this. And I felt that, Shami, you stress a lot on some global perspective on how you're going to apply your product and how you advocate about the environmental impact and sustainability and also education. So it seems to me the take is a bit, like both are great startups here, but looking at the different perspective how to apply it. So I will come back to you on all this initiative, like what you think, what your mindset is, right? I think that's what get you going, I feel, and so let me come back to you in a bit, Shami, on that.
Sure.
So Wayne, I'm going to, what a great lineup just now you gave, like you're talking at in New York speed, I think. So thank you for that presentation. And then, and I will come back to all those because I want to keep some surprises for the audience, right? But do you want to share a bit what inspired you to come to this stage? Because I do know that this idea, as you mentioned, has been brewing together with your co-founder. You saw something in that. What makes you take that step into this journey of starting up your own company?
Yeah, I think anyone who tries to sell really advanced technologies and to try to change how things are happening today to make, especially in the enterprise space, learn in government space to learn really quickly how much work there is to actually be done, right? And how there are many systems just provisioned in the 90s still actively running and doing their job, not necessarily a bad thing, right? But a lot of the engagements that we've seen across enterprises over the past years were just really, really basic stuff, like taking PDFs from a bunch of different locations, putting them into the same thing, right? So we're talking about this credentialing future, et cetera, right? But what has really informed our product vision is the realities of deploying a product in an enterprise or government space. That's one of the reasons why we pursue open source for many components, because getting something through like a budget department is an incredibly complex process for some enterprises and governments, I'd say many of them. So figuring out how to meet the customers where they are, not saying you have to throw away all your systems to, come out and use your new shiny gadgets, but on explaining how it fits into their ecosystem of existing technology, that's really shaped the approach to our products. So we respect things like X509 certificates or SAML2, which are technologies invented in the late 90s and early 2000s, but just endemic in use of an enterprise. So we're trying to just really listen to our customers and again, meet them where they are.
Yeah, I think also I think that to take that step, to create your company, I think that is a step that I just want. I maybe you don't think that is big deal to talk about it, but this is a startup forum, and I think that is very inspirational that you take that step. Like you got this product idea and you actually left, a company, and the company that you left, Consensus, actually is also very supportive of you. I know, I'm aware. So I think that that takes a bit of courage, right? I mean, do you want to comment a bit on that, Wayne?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think there are like starting a company, I think is like a spectrum of things, right? It's like there's registering like Delaware C Corp or wherever you want to register your entity, right? And that's one of the things, but focusing full time, 40 hours, 60 hour, 80 hour week, whatever on your company all the time, right? That's like a different level of commitment. I think that what has really surprised me and how important it was building the right professional network over time. And you can to be able to figure out who's going to support your company, not just financially or as customers, but people who can help you identify markets and places that you can focus on, right? That was the toughest part of starting my first company, right out of school. I didn't really know much about the industry. I had a lot of learning to do, but that would have been so shortcutted had I had some trusted folks to help me through that. They say that, it takes a village to raise a company. I think that's very true. So that I knew some folks from the standards community. I knew some folks in enterprise looking at new solutions, right? Be very careful about your employment contract and what it stipulates too, as you might be interested in looking at different markets and whatnot. But it was kind of a gradual, slow boiling, and not so much like I'm going to do a complete change of my life. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that you can do to set up that doesn't violate your employment contracts, to think about what you're going to do with your next venture.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne. So coming back to Shami, from London Pullers and to all this, I do see a link there. How it evolved, right? Yeah. I want to ask you something about like how you see the. First, I also want to know what inspired you to come to this stage, right? And actually have shared a bit, but what got you here, and how do you see this notion of privacy being played out? Because you talk about like the COVID and like being tracing that, and that contact tracing, there's a lot of criticism on that about the privacy perspective as well. And how do you see all this thing being panned out like in your product and in the industry?
For sure. In response to how I got here, I guess when I moved to Australia, Australia at the time, 16 years ago, was very much, do you have Australian experience before you can find a job? And this was, coming from an engineering background and policing, I decided against either of the two fields. And for the longest time, it was a struggle to find work, and being a new immigrant in a country. I saw a coffee truck one day and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I think I should dabble in this. Got into that business and I was very successful in that. We actually launched a franchise of sorts around that business, and haven't looked back since. I think when you get that entrepreneurship into your blood, you want to keep going, because what drives me in the ventures that I've had is I love learning new things, and everything that I've touched, I've had very little experience in. Which is not something I advise to entrepreneurs, but it was just in my personality, because my future was planned very much from the day I was born. Born in Sri Lanka, where there are only three professions, I think, or two professions. You're either a doctor or an engineer, maybe a lawyer. Nothing else existed culturally in the country. So when I was forced into this option of, hey, the world's your oyster, pick whatever you want and make a go of it, it was fabulous. So I think that's what's kept me going. And right now I have the best team that I've ever had, and I work with some of the greatest minds. So I certainly won't be looking back, and this is my journey, I guess. And simply because we're able to impact without having to deal with the politics and the bureaucracy. Of course, we have to deal with that from a client perspective, but internally we don't need to deal with that. And then in response to your question on privacy, privacy is fundamentally important to us as an organization, and I think it's fundamentally important to people to consider as well. If you haven't seen The Great Hack, or if you haven't seen Social Dilemma, or if you haven't heard of Cambridge Analytica, or if you haven't heard of the data hacks, then you've probably been hiding under a rock. And if you have heard of these things, I think we should be really considering the implications of not owning your data, or even if you're not owning your data, the fact that an external organization could be manipulating that data for other financial gains. So this is why we've taken a huge privacy approach. In fact, I know Karen's asked a question on education, but I'll get to that. But one of the things that we get asked even when we issue these credentials is, where are the analytics of our data? And it's the total opposite of what we do. We give control and ownership to the student, as opposed to a centralized location where we could, do a whole bunch of analytics and predict where the student's going to be in the next few months, or predict what subjects are going to be taking. That's a total opposite of an approach that we've taken. Privacy first for us is important. I mean, Kim talks about privacy all the time. Chief Privacy Advisor is a lady called Anne Kavukian, who was the Chief Privacy Commissioner for Ontario 3 years in a row. So we certainly keep ourselves accountable. It's something that we believe in, and it's something that we try to help with the messaging as well. And I think lastly, to end on that note, that we do a global challenge. Every year we talk about educating the youth. This year we had 703 students. And the biggest thing that we talk about during those discussions is privacy. We live in an age where Gen Zs don't really care about privacy. But we've made it our mission to really talk about the importance of that and showing these alternative solutions as a means of getting about with life.
We were just talking about Gen Z, and there was some comment how strange they are, but I think that they think that we are strange too. But I must say that I'm Gen X, so I think that Gen X is the most neutral. Y'all are Gen M, I think. So anyway, I think that it's also dealing with the different generation, like the approach to the technology. And I think that especially during this pandemic, you can see in the next few days, we'll be talking a bit about marketing and advertisement technology. And in that scope also, there's a lot of privacy and all these issues that comes out. Also the workforce of the future, like it's really a big topic. I think that even during this, the last decade, you can see the generational attitude towards the use of technology, how it impacts also the way we are working. So it's an interesting topic in this whole thing, and it's good that you are focusing on the educational perspective of that. So very interesting turn on that. Now I want to get back to the startup funding, right? Interesting topic. And I know that Wayne, just now you were sharing some of the thing. So one of the interesting perspective, of course, in this is the first, again, this is the first startup forum that I hosted, and for W3C chapter. And it's very interesting that we are also talking about management and also how we sustain our startup. So maybe Wayne, you would like to, I know that you were very eager to show us a slide. could we, and that is a big thing to show. Like how do you manage your startup funding? Yeah, if you can share anything with the audience. Yeah.
So to visit this slide again, we're bootstrapped with customer revenue. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we decided to go full-time on it. We found customers that were going to pay us money to build stuff, and that's awesome, right? But also when people pay you to build stuff and you want to build a product company instead of consultancy, which is what we're doing, then you also have to de-risk the business by finding product market fit. How can you build something that you can sell over and over again in such a way that it's an amazing deal for the people you're selling it to, and also you don't have to do that much more work to get it working for the next customer, right? And most startups die trying to find product market fit. So it's an exciting part of the business, stage of the business, to say the least. I'd say that most companies focused on credentialing exclusively are probably in this direction. But we've found some market success with Intake, which solves, I'd say, a pretty adjacent but lead-in problem, to building this kind of credentialing ecosystem we ultimately have a vision for. And part of it is also these trend lines, right? If tomorrow everyone started using verifiable credentials and multiple governments have expressed interest in doing so, then and we saw a real commitment to it financially or through policy or regulation, which I'd say GDPR, CCPA, some other privacy-centric data privacy regulations are, adjacent to that, then that really de-risks the ecosystem growth for all the companies depending on that. So that was a little long-winded answer to funding, but yeah, we have customers who pay us.
Yeah, I think that is the current trend is to going to see the customers, right? That instead of just promising on some ROI, right, for the future. I that thank you so much for sharing, and I can see the confidence in achieving that, Wayne, as you presented. So it's very nice information. I'm actually looking at the Q&A now, and pardon me because I have actually in front of me is just my laptop, so you can see I'm struggling to go through all the screens. But here, I know that Karen Myers earlier have asked about the use case in the education market, which I'm going to ask Shami to elaborate that in a bit more in terms of the identity. And I think that you have spoken a bit on that, Shami. But on that, I will come back to this question to you because I think that deserve more attention. From Tom, Tom Murray has asked a question, and it's to both the speakers. So lack of security in elections, the robots are real and alleged, has been an ongoing source of contention worldwide with the hacking, fraud, etc. So indeed, suspicion of insecurity is currently being used to challenge and attempt to overturn the result of current US elections. So all that said, how do you see an open source digital identity as helping create secure, open elections, especially in countries and states that cannot afford or don't trust shiny new gadgets or have citizenry who want security but also concerned about privacy? So it's a very good question. I don't think that, I don't think that we should just restrict to election. I think that just the notion that we are going to interact with robots and bots, and you do not really know the seemingly person like in front of you is a real person or an AI, right? Agents. Wayne, yeah, please, you want to answer?
I'll actually take the topic of elections head on, but I'm not an expert who has studied the entire dynamics of elections. But my general sense and our general opinion as a company is that it's already dangerous to consider using the internet to vote and things like that, right? And even considering things like blockchains, there was a recent paper that came out of MIT about, it's called going from bad to worse, from internet voting to blockchain voting. There are many problems with moving to digital systems. The goal is voter inclusivity. So I think that I think the more useful way to phrase the question might be, what are the elements of elections that we can assist with using digital credentialing technology, right? And it's really, really difficult and a hard problem. We have institutions that have successfully deployed these systems for centuries, if not millennia. And I think trusting a lot of the process is pretty founded. Whenever we have shifts to more digital systems, we really have to break down the problems to figure out what's the problem space this technology is actually good for and won't introduce some adverse consequences. If you have a high requirement for a strong credential presentation during voting, right? Does that lead to voter suppression or more moves for people to commit voter suppression, right? These are the questions that you really need to get the election experts into the room for to evaluate before we propose any digital system for these kinds of things. And I would recommend probably for elections and then also other industries, if we can identify smaller stakes use cases first, where you're not voting for elected officials, but you're voting for what color is, that building or something, right? And then you're slowly adding more stake to those decisions to stress test the system before using it for something large, and also doing an analysis just kind of independently from principles instead of experimental, where you can bring that to production slowly. But I think for such a critical infrastructure piece as elections, that would be my general approach.
Interesting. So many things to consider that. Just to share with you, for me, I actually walk to vote. I actually vote in person. It's almost empty. It's like the best voting experience I ever And I feel safer also just to go there physically to put my vote. Sorry, Gen X maybe. So anyway, Shami, you want to chime in about this election or non-election?
Sure. Big topic. It's something that we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. We did play around with some applications very early on. I mean, we've also spent time in Afghanistan in a war zone looking at solutions in a country that's rife with corruption and whatnot. I would liken Afghanistan to what we see in the US as far as you have so much money that's potentially available. If you just Google total tech exports of the US, it's trillions of dollars, right? If there's a will, I think there's a way to get these things happening. It's simply not digitization of the ballot boxes, because you still need to figure out how you authenticate the user, how you can verify, and there's no double voting and double dipping and things like that. So it's certainly not a pure blockchain solution. We see verifiable credentials playing a key role in it. We certainly see lots of other things that need to happen before this type of system could be implemented. It might be other nations that lead the way, because simply out of absolute necessity. We've seen election corruption in almost every country. And for us, seeing something on the ground in a war zone in Afghanistan really brought it home for us, where we actually see the exact same problems in a country like Canada, where we still have to physically go in somewhere, or you have to mail in, which, in this day and age, when we have this much extensive technology, it's mind-boggling that we have to wait several days, months to get a result. So it's a combination of technology, but also a big component of that is people and change. 84% digital transformation fails because of people and culture. And I think people and culture are the most important thing to consider when you consider these types of changes.
Yeah, I do agree on that part, because seriously, right? Actually, all the technology components are there for us to do this type of like electronic voting. I mean, we can even like implant a chip into, our body or our fingertip, like a chip, right? And using nanotechnologies or whatever. But then the question is that is everybody's opinion and acceptance of such way of doing things, right? It's like, I don't know, like I think that we should be like cybernetics, like growing like an extra finger or something. I'm just kidding. Sorry, this is just my fantasy. It's just a very interesting topic, right? All these things that is evolving and all this big news and then disputes also. But I just want to share again my experience for election voting is I went to a very perfect day and nice weather, and I just put my votes right in person, right? So interesting. So let's get back to some of the questions about and by the way, thank you, Tom, for a very nice question. I think that definitely is very a lot of dimensions to consider, and I think that should be something we should talk about it in future forums in W3C as well. Thank you. So I want to get back to some of the strategic management perspective. Like I just want to know how you manage your startup, like in terms of your management style, how you see that you're learning from your own past experience, what you envision to be a good management style. Yeah. Wayne, do you want to start first and then, yeah?
Yeah, sure. So some of this is pretty traditional in that I think that every organization needs a vision to align people around. And then you need to be able to describe what your values are as an organization. And once you have these North Stars in place where people can get oriented, we use OKRs in our company to define goals and timelines that are achievable and measurable. Personally, my management style for the company is very hands-off as much as possible. I like to have a lot of trust in folks. I borrow a lot from Andy Grove in talking about one-on-ones with folks and enabling people and unblocking them. It helps that I'm a technical CEO. So if necessary, I will start writing Rust and I will start reviewing PRs, and I will really understand people's problems, you know, when they run into blockers, and I try to be empathetic to that. So do you have any specific questions about management style? But I just gave you a listing of stuff.
Very good. And then Shami, do you want to share? Yeah.
For sure. So, I mean, I guess as a starting point, our organization is very much built around our core fundamental values, and that's the culture that we've set for anyone that comes into the business as well. So that's our, I mean, you know, as Wayne touched as well, it is our guiding light. As far as how I've always managed, it has always been a flat structure. So it's an open door policy. We're very much about empowering each and every person within the business. I mean, we have currently in our company, we have an intern as young as 22 to you know, former assistant deputy ministers, actually Kim as you know, as old as 70. So we have a wide range of age groups, as well as wide range of expertise and experience as well. And when you're working with smart people, you can just let them do their own thing. And then, of course, when things don't get done, you need to pull up appropriately. But it's a flat. In our case, it helps that it's quite a flat structure, and we're empowered to do the right thing. So the values keeps us in place and bound together, and then everything else is, you know, smart people doing their smart things.
Thanks for sharing your perspective as well. I think that what strikes me is that, you know, this is what we are talking about is technology startups. And a lot of technology startup CEO, of course, they are technology people themselves, very strong in technology. Some believe that's the only way to start up. And Shami just now also shared, oh, you would like to explore something that you really do not know about, right? That it's also another way. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's more like the approach, right? How you ultimately deliver what you envision to be, and that approach can be so many different ways of doing it, right? Yeah.
You just need to hire the right people around you, right? So, you know, you can't be everything. So as long as there's no ego and you have the right people surrounding you, then you have the best team. You don't necessarily need to know everything in detail. You don't need to be just a business person or a technical person, as long as you have the right team surrounding you, I think.
I completely agree with what Shami is saying. I feel that, like, one of my favorite quotes that I heard recently is like, imagine how much we could get done if no one cared about who got credit, right? So if you didn't have that concern about ego, and you're able to create a work culture where people feel like when they contribute, it's recognized and they don't have to fend for themselves and play these credit taking games, that's really, really helpful to unlocking people to doing what they want. And the last thing I'll add is, especially in a small company, you just really put a premium on generalists, people who are like, I'm going to get the result. I'm going to go stand up a server, even though I haven't done that. I had one engineer recently just design a user interface mockup, even though his career has been in backend engineering, right? And he got excited to do that. And people who feed off of that personal growth and doing different things and wearing different hats, you know, that's really who you want, I think, at a small company that might have to move, pivot, change to find product market fit and not die.
Yeah, very interesting. One of the concepts that I myself are thinking for the W3C chapter is the sense of open innovation. So like everybody can play a part and openly exchange ideas and share. And do you have any, so this is a live stream, and I just want to ask any advice for the W3C chapter in New York Metropolitan to do, you know, to cultivate that kind of open innovation?
I think, I guess by default, W3C is a very open platform. So I think we've certainly gained a lot of insights. We've learned a lot, and we've contributed where possible. So that it's a great platform for us to reference back, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, open innovation, when it comes to identity, at least we see it's certainly not one company. It's many companies, many groups coming together, because there's significant things that we need to consider. I mean, interoperability hasn't been solved yet, right? So you still have that big beast that you need to channel. So all these organizations, all these companies need to come together in an open manner. Governments need to be a lot more open to open source communities. I mean, open banking is a movement that has taken significant amount of time, but you still see countries that are opposed to that type of engagement. We're gradually seeing open data is a thing that governments are now starting to talk about.
Right.
But open ID is fundamentally important. I mean, we're part of various groups, but we feel that for us to truly innovate, government, the public-private partnership is essential. The tech companies absolutely need to come together, and identity is a solution that we work to collaboratively. Imagine a few years down the track, we could all celebrate together because we've all come together to solve for the problems that we commonly face. Interoperability being one key focus, but certainly there's many things that need to be solved before that.
Yeah, I feel that also a lot of security issues are because we are not collaborating together, because I'm just saying the obvious fact that a lot of the credit card fraud is because, it's because it's so, how to say, it's like open, not open, it's how to say, it's so, there's no open system to control this verifiable credential, right? And then you are showing to potential bad people, all your credential, like in your driving license or whatever, right? All the details. I mean, this is like crazy, right? You know what I mean? We are so like outdated, like in that, right? Even so, so I think that a lot of work can be done in that, right? In a lot of it. Wayne, do you want to talk a bit on the open innovation?
Yep. So I have one thing that I really would double down on, and that's I think facilitating the communication of value to the private sector and government. We are in the standards working groups nerds, just working, and I say that lovingly, but we love debating about JSON versus CBOR and all these other technical things, right? But sometimes it's hard to communicate the value that we can bring to processes as industry following these standards to enterprises, to governments in a way that they understand, and presupposing that people can read code to come to that point, is not a valid starting point. We need to meet people where they are there as well. And a vendor neutral forum like the W3C in New York Hub, engaging companies there and talking about the technology. You said credit cards. Well, we have a whole web payments working group, right, who's trying to solve a lot of these problems. But most of their work is technical specifications, and there's no easily accessible material or even a place where people can go and ask questions, which I'm sure one of the dozens of startups in this space would be happy to take a call with a large enterprise to talk more about the technology. So that's my feedback.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that too, because I really do think that we should talk more about the social impact and also the changes with technology that really create also issues, like for example, environmental, and whatever, like how to resolve issues and some of the security problems, like social issues and even inclusion and financial inclusion, even anything, digital inclusion, right? Now we are talking about cognitive accessibility. And so all these things, it comes about and we need to talk about it. We need to talk about the impact and also what the change process could be, that benefit everybody, right? Humanity, because actually, if anything we can learn from this pandemic is how we come out from this being a better human being. I hope, I hope, I mean, I do have confidence that positive about us, coming out and being a better person, right? So I just, okay, at this point, I really appreciate both of you. I know the time is up. I just want to announce to the, say thank you. I want to give a round of applause, right? Okay.
Thank you.
To two of you. I'm going to pick on your brain as we move forward to start up the startup community, right, in the W3C New York Metropolitan. So really so honored that two of you can join us, and really a wonderful time with you. And so I just want to say thanks to the audience too for staying with us. And we will be also having the rest of the Web Innovation Week. Tomorrow is on MAT. We are going MAT Tech, marketing and advertisement technology. So we have also invited New York Times, Washington Post, and also Cafe Media, which is the largest advertising platform for publishers. And also Friday, we have also the Workforce Forum. And I have invited also the CEO of Elevate Network, and also Google Chief of Staff, and also Janine Jensen, who is a leader in the Hispanic women's also a lot of initiatives. And we are going to talk about workforce and also the digital workforce of tomorrow, the future, and also some of the social issues also we are seeing, and especially gender equity and etc. So I again want to come back to our two really distinguished speakers. Thank you so much. All right. And I will get in touch with you shortly. All right. And everybody should know that our PR team will be reaching out to you to write up on all this thing. All right. Thank you. All right.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.